The City of Salem is a coastal city in Essex County, Massachusetts, in the United States. Located on the North Shore, Massachusetts, Salem is a New England bedrock of history and is considered one of the most significant seaports in Puritan American history. The City of Salem's reported population was 41,340 at the 2010 census. Salem and Lawrence were the county seats of Essex County prior to the abolishment of county government in 1999. The city is home to the House of Seven Gables, Salem State University, the Salem Willows Park, Forest River Park, and the Peabody Essex Museum. Salem is a residential and tourist area which includes the neighborhoods of Salem Neck, The Point, South Salem and North Salem, Witchcraft Heights, Pickering Wharf, and the McIntyre Historic District, featured notably in Arthur Miller's The Crucible. Much of the city's cultural identity is reflective of its role as the location of the Salem witch trials of 1692. Police cars are adorned with witch logos. A local public school is known as the Witchcraft Heights Elementary School. The Salem High School athletic teams are named the Witches, and Gallows Hill, a site of numerous public hangings, is currently used as a playing field for various sports. Tourists know Salem as a mix of important historical sites and a vibrant downtown that has more than 60 restaurants, cafes and coffee shops. In 2012, the Retailers Association of Massachusetts chose Salem as the recipient of their inaugural Best Shopping District award. President Barack Obama on January 10, 2013 signed Executive Order H.R. 1339 designating Salem as the birthplace of the U.S. National Guard. History. Salem, located at the mouth of the Naumkeag River at the site of an ancient Native American village and trading center, was first settled by Europeans in 1626, when a company of fishermen from Cape Ann led by Roger Conant arrived. Conant's leadership had provided the stability to survive the first 2 years, but he was immediately replaced by John Endicott, one of the new arrivals, by order of the Massachusetts Bay Company. Contraband graciously stepped aside and was granted 200 acres of land in compensation. These new planters and the old planters agreed to cooperate, in large part due to the diplomacy of Conant and Endicott. In recognition of this peaceful transition to the new government, the name of the settlement was changed to Salem, a Hellenized form of the word for peace in Hebrew, and the name mentioned several times in the Bible and traditionally associated with Jerusalem. In 1628, Endicott ordered that the Great House be moved from Cape Ann, reassembling on what is now Washington Street north of Church Street. A year later, the Massachusetts Bay Charter was issued, creating the Massachusetts Bay Colony with Matthew Craddock as its governor in London and Endicott as its governor in the colony. John Winthrop was elected governor in late 1629, and arrived with the Winthrop fleet in 1630, beginning the Great Migration. In 1639, Endicott was one of the signatories on the building contract for enlarging the meeting house in Townhouse Square for the first church in Salem. This document remains part of the town records at City Hall. He was active in the affairs of the town throughout his life. Samuel Skelton was the first pastor of the First Church of Salem, which is the original Puritan church in North America. Endicott already had a close relationship with Skelton, having been converted by him, and Endicott considered him as his spiritual father. Roger Conant died in 1679, at the age of 87. A large statue commemorating him stands overlooking Salem Common. Salem originally included much of the North Shore, including Marblehead. Most of the accused in the Salem witch trials lived in nearby Salem Village, now known as Danvers, although a few lived on the outskirts of Salem. Salem Village also included Peabody, and parts of present-day Beverly. Middleton, Topsfield, Wenham and Manchester by the Sea were once parts of Salem. William Hathorne was a prosperous businessman in early Salem and became one of its leading citizens of the early colonial period. He led troops to victory in King Philip's War, served as a magistrate on the highest court, and was chosen as the first Speaker of the House of Deputies. He was a zealous advocate of the personal rights of freemen against royal emissaries and agents. Puritans had come to Massachusetts to obtain religious freedom for themselves, but had no particular interest in establishing a haven for other faiths. The laws were harsh, with punishments that included fines, deprivation of property, banishment or imprisonment. One of the most widely known aspects of Salem is its history of witchcraft allegations, which in many popular accounts started with Abigail Williams, Betty Paris, and their friends playing with a Venus glass and egg. Salem is also significant in legal history as the site of the Dorothy Talby trial, where a mentally ill woman was hanged for murdering her daughter. Because at the time Massachusetts made no distinction between insanity and criminal behavior, the story of the girls in Salem experimenting with fortune-telling is, however, apocryphal. William Hathorne's son, Judge John Hathorne, came to prominence in the late 17th century. People generally believed witchcraft to be real. Nothing caused more fear in the Puritan community than people who appeared to be possessed by demons, and witchcraft was a serious felony. Judge Hathorne is the best known of the witch trial judges, and he became known as the hanging judge, for sentencing witches to death. Salem and the Revolutionary War. On February 26, 1775, Patriots raised the drawbridge at the North River, preventing British Colonel Alexander Leslie and his 300 troops of the 64th Regiment of Foot from seizing stores and ammunition hidden in North Salem. A few months later, in May 1775, a group of prominent merchants with ties to Salem, including Francis Cabot, William Pynchon, Thomas Barnard, A. Holyoake and William Pickman, felt the need to publish a statement retracting what some interpreted as loyalist leanings and to profess their dedication to the colonial cause. During the Revolution, the town became a center for privateering. Although the documentation is incomplete, about 1,700 letters of marque, issued on a per-voyage basis, were granted during the American Revolution. Nearly 800 vessels were commissioned as privateers and accredited with capturing or destroying about 600 British ships. During the War of 1812, privateering resumed trade with the Pacific and Africa. Following the Revolution, many ships used as privateers were too large for short voyages in the coasting trade, and their owners determined to open new avenues of trade to distant countries. The young men of the town, fresh from service on the armed ships of Salem, were eager to embark in such ventures. Captain Nathaniel Silsby, his first mate Charles Darby, and second mate Richard J. Cleveland were not yet 20 years old when they set sail on a 19-month voyage that was perhaps the first from the newly independent America to the East Indies. In 1795, Captain Jonathan Kahn set sail for Sumatra in the Malay archipelago on his secret voyage for pepper. Nothing was heard from him until 18 months later he entered with a cargo of pepper in bulk, the first to be so imported into the country, and which sold at the extraordinary profit of 700%. The Empress of China, formerly a privateer, was refitted as the first American ship to sail from New York to China. By 1790, Salem had become the sixth largest city in the country, and a world-famous seaport, particularly in the China trade. Along with exporting codfish to Europe and the West Indies, importing sugar and molasses from the West Indies, tea from China, and products depicted on the city seal from the East Indies, in particular Sumatran pepper. Salem ships also visited Africa, Zanzibar in particular, Russia, Japan, and Australia. The neutrality of the United States was tested during the Napoleonic Wars. After the Chesapeake Leopard affair, Thomas Jefferson was faced with a decision to make regarding the situation at hand. In the end, he chose an economic option. The Embargo Act of 1807. Jefferson essentially closed all the ports overnight, putting a damper on the seaport town of Salem. The Embargo of 1807 was the starting point on the path to the War of 1812 with Great Britain. Both Britain and France imposed trade restrictions in order to weaken each other's economies. This also had the effect of disrupting American trade and testing the United States' neutrality. As time went on, harassment of American ships by the British Navy increased. This included impressment and seizures of American men and goods. The book The Salem India Story by Vanita Shastri narrates the adventures of the Salem seamen who connected the far corners of the globe through trade. This period marks the beginning of U.S. international relations, long before the 21st century wave of globalization. It reveals the global trade connections that Salem had established with faraway lands, which were a source of livelihood and prosperity for many. Charles Endicott, master of Salem merchantman Friendship, returned in 1831 to report Sumatran natives had plundered his ship, murdering the first officer and 2 crewmen. Following public outcry, President Andrew Jackson ordered the Potomac on the first Sumatran expedition, which departed New York on August 19, 1831. This also led to the mission of diplomatist Edmund Roberts, who negotiated a treaty with said bin Sultan, Sultan of Muscat and Oman, on the 21st of September 1833. In 1837, the Sultan moved his main place of residence to Zanzibar and welcomed Salem citizen Richard Waters as an United States consul of the early years. Legacy of the East Indies and Old China trade. The Old China trade left a significant mark in 2 historic districts: Chestnut Street District, part of the Samuel McIntyre Historic District containing 407 buildings, and the Salem Maritime National Historic Site, consisting of 12 historic structures and about 9 acres of land along the waterfront in Salem. Elias Haskip Darby was among the wealthiest and most celebrated of post-revolutionary merchants in Salem, and owner of the Grand Turk, the first New England vessel to trade directly with China. Thomas Perkins was his supercargo and established strong ties with the Chinese and garnered the Forbes fortune through his illegal opium sales. Salem was incorporated as a city on March 23, 1836, and adopted a city seal in 1839 with the motto, Divitis Indiae Uscad Ultimum Sinum, Latin for, to the rich East Indies until the last lap. Nathaniel Hawthorne was overseer of the port from 1846 until 1849. He worked in the customs house near Pickering Wharf, his setting for the beginning of the Scarlet Letter. In 1858, an amusement park was established at Salem Willows, a peninsula jutting into the harbor. Prosperity left the city with a wealth of fine architecture, including federal-style mansions designed by one of America's first architects, Samuel McIntyre, for whom the city's largest historic district is named. These homes and mansions now comprise the greatest concentrations of notable pre-1900 domestic structures in the United States. Shipping declined throughout the 19th century. Salem and its silting harbor were increasingly eclipsed by Boston and New York. Consequently, the city turned to manufacturing. Industries included tanneries, shoe factories and the Namkik Steam Cotton Company. More than 400 homes burned in the Great Salem Fire of 1914, leaving 3,500 families homeless from a blaze that began in the corn leather factory. The historic concentration of federal architecture on Chestnut Street were spared. Air Station Salem and the National Guard. Coast Guard Air Station Salem was established on February 15, 1935 when the U.S. Coast Guard established a new seaplane facility in Salem because there was no space to expand the Gloucester Air Station at 10 Pound Island. Coast Guard Air Station Salem was located on Winter Island, an extension of Salem Neck which juts out into Salem Harbor. Search and rescue, hunting for derelicts and medical evacuations were the station's primary areas of responsibility. During the first year of operation, Salem crews performed 26 medevac missions. They flew in all kinds of weather, and the radio direction capabilities of the aircraft were of significant value in locating vessels in distress. During World War II, aircrews from Salem flew neutrality patrols along the coast, and the air station roster grew to 37 aircraft. Anti-submarine patrols were flown on a regular basis. In October 1944, Air Station Salem was officially designated as the first air-sea rescue station on the eastern seaboard. The Martin PBM Mariner, a holdover from the war, became the primary rescue aircraft. In the mid-1950s helicopters came, as did Grumman Hu-16 Albatross amphibious flying boats. The air station's missions included search and rescue, law enforcement, counting migratory waterfowl for the U.S., biological survey and assisting icebound islands by delivering provisions. The station's surviving facilities are part of Salem's Winter Island Marine Park. Salem Harbor was deep enough to host a seadrome with 3 sea lanes, offering a variety of takeoff headings irrespective of wind direction unless there was a strong steady wind from the east. This produced large waves that swept into the mouth of the harbor, making water operations difficult. When the seadrome was too rough, returning amphibian aircraft would use Naval Auxiliary Air Facility Beverly. Salem Air Station moved to Cape Cod in 1970. In 2011, the City of Salem made official the plans for the tip of the 30-acre Winter Island Park and squared off against residents who were against bringing 2 power-generating windmills to the tip of Winter Island. The Renewable Energy Task Force, along with Energy and Sustainability Manager Paul Marquis, have recommended the construction of a 1.5-megawatt power turbine at the tip of Winter Island, which is the furthest point from residences and where the winds are the strongest. The nearly 30-acre park has been open to the public since the early 1970s. In 2011, a master plan was developed with help from the planning and design firm the Cecil Group of Boston and Bioengineering Group of Salem, and the City of Salem paid $45,000 in federal money. In the long term, the projected cost to rehabilitate just the barracks is $1.5 million. This is a very important project since Fort Pickering guarded Salem Harbor as far back as the 17th century. Designation as National Guard birthplace in 1637, the first muster was held on Salem Common, where for the first time a regiment of militia drilled for the common defense of a multi-community area, thus laying the foundation for what became the Army National Guard. The General Court of the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1637 ordered the organization of the colony's militia companies into the North, South and East regiments. The colonists adopted the English militia system, which obligated all males between the ages of 16 and 60 to possess arms and participate in the defense of the community. On August 19, 2010, Governor of Massachusetts Deval Patrick signed HB 1145, an act designating the City of Salem as the birthplace of the National Guard. This was later approved by the U.S. House of Representatives in March 2012, and was signed into law by President Barack Obama on 10 January 2013. Signed Executive Order H.R. 1339, which designates the City of Salem, Mass., as the birthplace of the U.S. National Guard. Each April, the 2nd Corps of Cadets gather in front of St. Peter's Episcopal Church, where their founder, Stephen Abbott, is buried. They lay a wreath, play taps, and fire a 21-gun salute. In another annual commemoration, soldiers gather at Old Salem Armory to honor soldiers who were killed in the battles of Lexington and Concord. On April 14, 2012, Salem celebrated the 375th anniversary of the first muster on Salem Common, with more than 1,000 troops taking part in ceremonies and a parade. World record for federal furniture. In 2011, a mahogany side chair with carving done by Samuel McIntyre sold at auction for $662,500. The price set a world record for federal furniture. McIntyre was one of the first architects in the United States, and his work represents a prime example of early federal-style architecture. Elias Haskett Darby, Salem's wealthiest merchant and thought to be America's first millionaire, and his wife, Elizabeth Crowninshield, purchased the set of 8 chairs from McIntyre. The Samuel McIntyre Historic District represents the greatest concentration of 17th and 18th century domestic structures anywhere in America. It includes McIntyre commissions such as the Pierce Nichols House and Hamilton Hall. The Witch House or Jonathan Corwin House is also located in the district. Samuel McIntyre's house and workshop were located at 31 Summer Street in what is now the Samuel McIntyre Historic District. Film, literature, and television in Salem. The 2015 single, Spirit of Salem, by Mae Jungers was inspired by Salem's October tourist attraction Haunted Happenings. Salem Secret Underground. The history of the tunnels in the city goes over a grand conspiracy that was engineered by the son of America's first millionaire, paid for by many of our country's most influential politicians during the Adams administration, that involved 3 miles of tunnels to avoid paying duties on imports. Dowgan, Christopher John Luke. Salem Secret Underground. The history of the tunnels in the city. Salem, M.A. Salem House Press. p. 314. ISBN 978-0-98366655-4. In June 1970, Bewitched filmed on location in Salem. The Europeans, an Academy Award-nominated adaptation of the Henry James novel, starring Lee Remick, filmed in 1978 and was released in 1979. Three Sovereigns for Sarah, PBS drama starring Vanessa Redgrave, 1985. Hocus Pocus, Disney's Halloween comedy drama film starring Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. The daytime scenes were filmed in Salem while the nighttime scenes were filmed at Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, California. The Travel Channel, Places of Mystery. Which City? 2000. Ghost Adventures. 2010. In 2007, PBS aired a documentary titled Hand of God, regarding the sexual abuse and cover-up of a Salem priest serving at St. James Church in the 1960s. In 2008, scenes from the film Bride Wars were filmed here. An episode of the TLC series What Not to Wear was filmed in Salem in 2009. The 2012 Rob Zombie movie, The Lords of Salem, was set and filmed in Salem. Some interior and street scenes for 2013's American Hustle were filmed on Federal Street in Salem, outside the Essex Superior Courthouse and Old Granite Courthouse. Historic images of Salem. One of many sealed tunnel entrances in Salem. Salem Depot, 1910. Peabody House, 1905. Salem Harbor in 1907. Lafayette Street in 1910. Naumkeag Mills, 1910. Roger Williams House C, 1910. Sampler made in Salem in 1791. Art Institute of Chicago Textile Collection. Pickering House, 1905. Essex Street, 1920. Townhouse Square, 1891.